I'd like to do now is to hand you over to our representative from Brussels. I'd like to introduce, excuse me, I'd like to introduce Maurits Bruggink from EMOTA. Thank you.
I represent EMOTA. EMOTA is the European trade body for the e-commerce and omni-channel sector. So we address not only the pure players in e-commerce, but also the issues on omni-channel. Very important issue, because omni-channel means that we want to have similar rules and laws for all the channels involved. So that's basically our omni-channel aspect. So we are based in Brussels. We are interacting with the European legislator. Don't forget, most of the EU laws, or the laws that you find here in Ireland, are actually originating in Brussels. About 80% of all the laws that you find in any member state are made in Brussels. So that's where we basically interact. We lobby on behalf of the industry to the different European institutions. And there's an enormous amount of things are going on. We represent an organization, a mixed organization of both national associations and companies. We have some of the largest companies as members, and also national associations in 17 EU member states, including Ireland. In the next 10 minutes, what I would like to do is basically touch upon the key issues that e-commerce, that web shops face in Europe, see how they are regulated or about to be regulated by Europe, how we interact with that, so how we want to change it, and also to see what the impact of Brexit would be on each of these individual topics. Are there any web shops actually here in the audience or not? Or am I talking to regulators or to web shops? Is anyone operating web shops? There are a few web shops here. Okay, good. So maybe I hope you can relate to some of the things that I'm going to say. I travel around in Europe, all around in different conferences, and I have a good idea what is playing in different markets in the European Union. The number one issue actually is that there is not really a single market. There's not nobody sees, no web shop actually sees Europe as a single market. We're talking about a single market, but I have yet to come across one web shop that says, we operate in Europe. Nobody does it. So normally what you see is a web shop operates in one country, moves maybe to a neighboring country, and selects a few very dedicated markets to operate in. So you have a number of hurdles to overcome. There are not only regulatory hurdles within the internal market, but also commercial hurdles. So how much of your sales is actually generated by Google searches? There are many researches on that aspect. It's roughly 60%. So 60% of the consumers find actually the product that they want through Google searches or through web searches in general, web search engines. So just for a web shop to be able to operate in another country, the investment it has to make just to stay up in the Google searches in that country is enormous. So the customer acquisition costs going cross-border in the internal market are tremendous. And that's why you very often see that web shops select not only one or two few specific countries, but because of all the hurdles that exist, they select very often to go cross-border in the EU, cross-border through a marketplace. So you will find many web shops that say, well, okay, for example, I'm a German web shop, and well, we all speak German in Austria as well, so I cover also Austria, I cover Switzerland, a neighboring country, France, but for going to Italy, yes, it's an important market, but eBay is very strong in Italy, or Amazon is very strong in Spain. So they select a mixture of own sales and marketplace sales. That's what you see across. Now, if you put that into a Brexit perspective, you may argue, I would like to argue here, does it really matter Brexit? Because a web shop anyway searches on a specific market. It doesn't see an internal market, and it doesn't even mean that you have priority markets within the EU. My chairman, the chairman of our association, is a web shop from Sweden. He sells design furniture, and his main markets are actually not in the European Union, but are in South Korea and Japan, so in Asia. So it turns out to be there is a big demand for his Swedish design furniture from those countries. So it, again, it proves the kind of the point, are we not getting too much upset by this Brexit? Will it really interfere? I mean, for you, I guess, in terms of language, but also in logistics, everything, the UK probably remains your largest market, and Brexit, I wonder whether it really will affect you that much in doing business. So that's a general kind of comment. But for individual items that are of concern to web shops, of course, there are a kind of issues to handle. The number one issue when you cross a border for web shops around the EU is VAT. So the moment you have some business going on in another country and it passes the threshold, a specific threshold, normally it's about 35,000 euros, but in the UK, for example, I believe it's 100,000 euros, it's higher. But the moment you have some significant business, you have to register for VAT in that country. Now that's an enormous amount of red tape. So it's not only simply making a phone call to some ministry in that country, it's normally it means that you have to do an application procedure, you have to present yourself in that country physically. Very often you have to open up a bank account locally to deal with it, so then the bank asks you actually to legally establish yourself in that country, or to ask for a VAT handling consultant, and so on. There's a lot of red tape that follows that. And that's what you see very often as the main hurdle why a shop doesn't want to cross a border. And it's a pity because the studies that have been done on growth of the market shows that a web shop that crosses borders, that sells cross-border, sells roughly 15% more than pure domestic web shop. That's a recent study done last month, came out by DPD. So it's on the website of DPD, you can check that. So it's a pity. We should actually encourage this cross-border sales. But there are more hurdles. Consumer legislation is another hurdle. Not all the laws are the same. So you know that within the EU, there is a law, for example, that says that if you sell something online, a consumer has the right for withdrawal, a cooling off period of 2 weeks. That seems, for many other countries, seems like a big period. You may wonder what is going to happen under Brexit, under the aspect of consumer legislation. Consumer legislation is really very, you could say, very business unfriendly in the EU. We are currently discussing a consumer law that goes through the Parliament, the European Commission, that, for example, will oblige you as a web shop to prove 2 years after you sold the product to the consumer that you delivered the product in good state. That means that up until 2 years later, a consumer can come back and say, this dishwasher, this pair of skis, it's broken, and it's because you didn't deliver it in a good state. So, and then the burden of proof is with you. You have to prove that 2 years ago, you delivered it in a good state. That's the current proposal of Brussels. And that's the kind of things that we are now fighting to say, well, this is just not logic. It doesn't make business sense to have such kind of rules, but it does happen. So consumer rules are also very different still from country to country. So you have high levels of consumer protection, but for example, consumer guarantees, that's an area that is still not harmonized. So we have a consumer guarantee rule in Finland for a lifelong, so it's a lifelong guarantee that you have as a consumer for any product. It's a nice guarantee you can have. Portugal, I think it's 6 years, UK 6 years, depending on what kind of product you sell. So that's still something that you have to deal with if you cross borders. My idea would be is that Brexit will soften slightly the UK consumer protection standards. It will soften. It will not keep up at the same rate as in the rest of Europe. So it will probably for you be easier actually to sell, because for domestic reasons you already have specific higher standards, and you can then have different standards in the UK. The UK is also one of my guesses, will still for UK shops they will still have to comply with EU consumer laws outside the UK. So there's something like an international agreement among EU and other European countries that says, well, it's the law of the consumer that applies. So if you sell online something to someone cross-border, it's the law of the consumer. So if you're a British web shop and you sell to an Irish consumer, the British web shop will still have to comply with all the EU laws on consumer protection. So that's in that sense, you will not have any change in competition, I guess, from Brexit. Another one is payment methods. That's a classical one as well. The payment market in Europe is not yet harmonized. So even if you talk about credit or debit cards that are internationally renowned, the Visas and the MasterCards, you will not have as a web shop the guarantee that you actually get paid by consumers in other countries. So many web shops around Europe, for example, refuse customers from a specific country because they say, I cannot verify whether this is backed up, the credit is there. That's unfortunate, so there's still a hurdle there. And there's also, if you look at other countries, a number of countries have developed very low-cost payment solutions. And these are so attractive that if you go into any of these countries, you're almost like obliged to adapt to this and to offer that solution as well. So for example, if you sell in the Netherlands, all the banks have developed a system where you pay 0.35 cents per transaction, which is nothing. So disregarding the level, the amount of the purchase. So that compared to, I think, PayPal is around 0.7%, but then on sales volume, on the sales value, the Visa Master is 2.5%, and this is a system that offers 35% flat rate. So the Dutch consumer is used to this, as the German consumers used to their German payment system and the Danish to the Danish system, and there are a number of countries with very, very beneficial payment systems. So if you want to be competitive in that market with these consumers, you're kind of obliged to offer that as well. Unfortunately, it's not harmonized. Now, one of the things that is heading our direction as web shops also is that the banks in Europe are currently discussing, in order to combat fraud, a new measure that will oblige any shop, if the sales are beyond 30 euros, to demand extra safety measures to prevent fraud. The main issue is that it will be mandatory to have an external device to check the purchase. In other words, for anything above 30 euros, a consumer online must have a card reader, put a card in the card reader, start doing all kinds of transactions. Now, we all know that for any of these transactions, any single transaction that you add on a consumer experiences, you lose a number of customers. And this has proved to be very, very damaging in the past when they introduced these kind of measures elsewhere. So this is an area where we are going to fight strongly against. We are at the moment fighting against it. And I guess that with Brexit, this is typically a measure where the UK will probably not ask this. So it will be easier for consumers to go post-Brexit to buy at a UK web shop than at a continental web shop, than an EU web shop. There will be a great advantage. I don't know whether you ever have bought on a US web shop, for example. I do my travel all on a US web shop, hopper.com. It's really great prices. And sometimes I wonder, it's like you do it on your mobile app, and it says 1,500 euros. Swipe right to buy. You swipe right, and that's 1,500 euros gone there. So you have to think well. It's consumer convenience, but so payment is another area of concern. Data privacy is another area where a lot of things are happening. There are now proposals made by the European Union again that we kind of fighting as well in order to keep the rights for us to basically use customer data. We are web shops, so we don't have a day-to-day physical contact with our customers. Our contact with our customers is because we have the data of the customers, and we want to continue to do basically profiling and marketing emphasis based on that data, and that is now under threat. So the current Commission proposals, the proposals that they lie on the table, kind of restrict this considerably. So here again, not only are we fighting against it, coming back to Brexit, I cannot imagine that a UK more business-friendly attitude in general than continental Europe will go ahead with those kind of measures. So I think that it will be easier in that respect to operate your shop or to do your data processing elsewhere, like as in many web shops today in the EU, they send all their data to the US for specific companies that deal with that data. These were some of the specific EU things. Then there are also issues that go beyond the EU that we look at that will apply to the UK after Brexit. One of them, for example, is simply the payment of VAT. If you look now at our friends from Alibaba, they're a member of our organization, so I'll be very friendly in my comments, but if you order anything in Alibaba, and it's really surging in the EU, my latest estimations are around 600 million parcels per year entering the European Union, 600 million parcels. The entire European system, customs systems, tax system is not ready for this kind of volumes. So it cannot handle it. I spoke to one Dutch customs official from the Rotterdam harbor, and he said that around 0.04 of all the parcels arriving from China actually are controlled. Now, that's very little. So on that aspect, so on these volumes that you have, there's the aspect of VAT. So I don't know whether any one of you bought anything from China, but normally products can be, one, very cheap, and secondly, they come in some kind of envelope, never in these kind of standard boxes that you get from other operators. So you get them from some manufacturer, and it is always, it says gift. And there are rules, international rules, if there are gift, or if it's below 2 kilos, and it's below 22 euros of value, then it can be shipped without paying VAT and duties. You can buy many expensive things that don't weigh 2 kilos, I mean computers and stuff. You will get it shipped. It will still say gift, it will still say $10, it will still say, so all these products come in. I'm not telling just out of the cuff. UPS has made a study recently, and they showed it in around 15% of the merchandise parcels coming in by regular post, actually VAT is paid on. So all the rest just comes in without VAT. Well, I live in a country, Belgium, VAT level very high, 21%. That's a 21% margin that Chinese merchants get by not paying VAT. If you do it through regular UPS, for example, it's actually UPS that delivers from, say, China to Ireland, and they will have to collect, they will try to collect the VAT if the VAT is not yet paid. So you will have a UPS guy delivering it here and say, well, you bought this parcel, it has a value of 150 euros, this is your VAT rate, you now have to pay it. Does it always happen? No, and a lot of it at times it doesn't happen because the consumer says, no, I didn't agree on that, I don't want to pay. Well, so that's the problem of UPS. And if you now take it back to the UPS, to the Brexit situation, you may wonder, 600 million parcels, how many hundreds of thousands, millions of parcels, tens of millions, I don't know the volumes actually between individual parcels between the UK and the rest of continental Europe. But I guess that also there, the European customs and administration is not equipped to deal with these kind of bags of parcels that arrive in a very irregular fashion. they're not going to open up these bags and start checking it. It's not going to happen. So this is my version of a soft Brexit, is that even if they agree something on paying taxes or something, paying the VAT customs, who's going to control it? So I guess the traders, there will be many traders out there in the UK, they will just send it the way their Chinese colleagues are doing it as well, and just let it go and see whether somewhere at the receiving end someone's going to pay any VAT or excise duties. That's my guess. Another and final element that I want to mention here as well is, and I think that's a crucial element for any kind of trade between outside the EU into the EU, and that's product safety. So out of the 600 million parcels coming from China, are they all complying with these many product rules that we have in the European Union? You have laws on cosmetics, on toys, on childcare products, and so on and so forth. So you have many of these rules. They all have to comply. This is something that the UK will, also after Brexit, will have to comply with all these products rules. They will have to do that. Is the control sufficient? We, as an association, we're working on it now. We don't want to have any products coming from outside, be it China or somewhere else, being unsafe. It will damage the reputation of our sector. So we are working currently with every player, including Alibaba as a member, to make sure that we do our bit in ensuring that all the products that are being shipped are safe. So these are a bit the problems that we're dealing with, the issues that we're dealing with in Europe. Some of them will have a Brexit effect, but my guess as a general conclusion is that there will be a softer landing than you would, maybe some of the pessimists would predict. So if there are any further questions, then I'm going to take. Thank you very much.